Hi, 5th grade. I'm so glad that you're going to come back and keep listening to the book. So we're going to read chapter 3 today of My Side of the Mountain. And I had promised you in yesterday's video to read you the little sticky note that I found in my book. So like I said, I had read this book when I was in 5th grade. And I had to do summary notes of each chapter. And this one apparently got stuck in it. So it just says, this chapter is about Sam trying to train the baby falcon. The baby falcon got his first prey. So I just had to summarize it in like 2 sentences of what the chapter was about. But let's go ahead and read. So the chapter is called The Manner in Which I Find Gribley's Farm. So next day I told Bill goodbye, and as I strode, warm and fed, onto the road, he called to me. I'll see you tonight. The back door will be open if you want a roof over your head. I said okay, but I knew I wouldn't see Bill again. I knew how to make fire, and that was my weapon. With the fire, I could conquer the Catskills. I also knew how to fish. To fish and how to make fire. That's all I needed to know, or so I thought. 3 rides that morning took me to Delhi. Somewhere between there and here is great-grandfather's beech tree with the name Gribley carved in it. That much I knew from Dad's stories. By 6 o'clock, I still hadn't found anyone who had ever heard of the Gribleys, much less Gribley's Beach. So I spent the night on the porch of an old schoolhouse and ate some chocolate bars for supper. It was cold and hard, but I was so tired I would have slept in a wind tunnel. At dawn, I had a real hard thought. Where would I find out about Gribley's farm? Some old map, I said. Now, where would I find an old map? A library. Maybe. I should look and see if I could find it. So I went to the library. The librarian was very helpful. She was sort of young and had brown hair and brown eyes and loved books as much as I did. Now, the library didn't open until 10:30, so I got there at 9, and after I lolled and rolled about on the steps for about 10 or 15 minutes, the door whisked open and this tall lady asked me if I wanted to come in and browse until opening time. All I said to her is I wanted to find the old Gribley farm, and that the Gribleys hadn't lived on it for maybe 100 years, and with that, she was off. I can still hear her heels click when I think of her, scattering herself among those shelves, finding me old maps, the histories of the Catskills, the files and letters and deeds that must have come from the attics around the city. Miss Turner, that was her name, found it. She found Gribley's farm in an old book of Delaware County. Then she looked about the roads too and drew me maps and everything. Finally she said, "Now what do you want to know this for? Some school project?" "Oh, no, Miss Turner. I want to live there." "But Sam, it's all forest and trees now. The house is probably only an old foundation covered with moss." "That's all I want. I'm going to trap animals and eat nuts and bulbs and berries and make myself a house. You see, I am Sam Gribley, and I thought I would like to live on my great-grandfather's farm." Miss Turner was the only person that ever believed in me. She smiled, sat back in her chair, and said, "Well, I do declare." The library was just opening when I gathered the notes that we had made and started off. As I pushed open the door, Miss Turner leaned over and said to me, "Sam, we have some very good books on plants and trees and animals in case you should get stuck." I knew what she was thinking, so I told her I'd remember that. Armed with Miss Turner's map, I found the first stone wall that marked the farm. The old roads to it were all grown up and mostly gone, but by locating a stream at the bottom of the mountain, I was able to begin at the bridge and go north, up about 1.5 miles. There, caterpilling around boulders and roller coasting up ravines and down hills, was the mound of rocks that had once been great-grandfather's boundary fence. And then, do you know, I couldn't believe I was there. I sat on the old gray stones for a long time, looking through the forest, up that steep mountain, saying to myself, "Now it must be Sunday afternoon, and it's raining, and Dad is trying to keep us all quiet by telling us about great-grandfather's farm, and he's telling it so real that I can see it." And then I said, "No, I'm really here, because I've never been this hungry before." I wanted to run all the way back to the library and tell Miss Turner that I found it, partly because I think she would have liked to know, and partly because, as Dad said to me as I left, "If you find the place, tell someone in Delhi. I may visit you someday." Of course he was kidding, because he thought I'd come home by the next day, but maybe after many weeks he would think of what I meant and what I'd said, and he might come up to check on me. However, I was way too hungry to run back. I took my hook and line and went down the mountain to the stream. There I caught a big old catfish. I climbed back up the stone wall with great spirits. Now it was getting late, so I didn't try and explore anymore. I went right to work making a fire. I decided that even if I didn't have enough time to cut the boughs for a bed, I was going to have cooked fish and a fire to huddle around during those cold night hours. May is not exactly warm in the Catskills. And by firelight I wrote this: "Dear Bill, That was the old man. After 3 tries, I finally got a handful of grass to glow on the tinder. Grass is even better than pine needles, and tomorrow I'm going to try the outside bark of a river birch. I read somewhere that it has combustible oil in it, and the Indians used to use it to start fires. Anyway, I did just what you showed me, and I had cooked catfish for dinner. It was so good. Your friend Sam. After I wrote that, I had remembered that I didn't know his last name, so I stuffed the note in my pocket and made myself a bed of boughs and leaves in the shelter of a stone wall, right there, and I fell fast asleep. I must say now about the first fire. It was magic. Out of the dead tinder and grass and sticks came a live, warm light. It crackled and snapped and smoked, and filled the woods with brightness. It was lit to the trees and made them feel warm and friendly. It stood tall and bright against the night and held it back. Oh, this first night was so different than the last one. I was so stuffed with catfish, and I have since learned to cook it more, but never have I enjoyed a meal as much as that first one, and never have I felt so independent again. That's the end of chapter 3. So I'll record chapter 4 and give it to you guys tomorrow. Hopefully you've had a wonderful weekend. Let me know what you are reading and anything you are learning. I'd love to keep in touch with all of you, and I will see you all in a couple weeks.